Commas have a habit of cropping up in sentences where they have no right to be. Omitting commas is one thing, putting them where they are trespassing is quite another. And the latter can be a very clear signal to your reader that you're not in full control of your writing and, by extension, your thoughts. So it's just as important to know when not to use a comma as it is to know its rightful place. So let's look at 3 places where commas can be used incorrectly: comma splicing, asides, and compound predicates. With comma splicing, that's what we do when we join or link 2 independent clauses only with a comma. Remember, independent clauses are those that could stand alone as sentences in their own right because they contain a subject and a verb. Look at this example. We conducted the experiment successfully, comma, now we have analysed the results. The clauses on either side of that comma are independent. They could exist on their own. They have a subject, they have a verb. But the problem is we've spliced or joined them together with only a comma. And a comma isn't strong enough glue to hold different clauses together. So this sentence is incorrect. How could we have fixed it? Well, there are a number of possible solutions. Perhaps the simplest thing is simply to make them 2 different sentences. We conducted the experiment successfully, full stop. Now we have analysed the results. That works. Or, of course, we could use a conjunction. We conducted the experiment successfully, comma, and now we have analysed the results. So we've made a compound sentence using a conjunction. And as we learned last time, we've preceded that conjunction with a comma. We could, if we are trying to be a little more sophisticated, perhaps have linked the clauses together with a semicolon. We'll be talking more about semicolons later. All of these solutions are acceptable, all are grammatically correct, and which you choose is really a matter of personal style and preference. When it comes to asides, we often use a pair of commas to set off an aside or an interruption in a sentence, usually when we're trying to add additional information or description about a noun in the sentence. Such an aside is usually called a parenthetical element, as if it could be in parentheses. It could be encased in brackets. And just with anything that we have in brackets, an aside that is set off with 2 commas is a part of the sentence that could be removed without changing the essential meaning of the sentence. Here are some examples. Stonehenge, one of the most important archaeological sites, is found in Wiltshire. Now what we have there as an aside between the 2 commas, one of the most important archaeological sites, is additional information about Stonehenge. But if we were to remove it, the sentence would still work. Stonehenge is found in Wiltshire. Here's another example. RMS Titanic, comma, the most famous liner of the 20th century, comma, was built in Belfast. Again, what we've got between the commas is additional information that we're presenting as an aside, but if we were to remove it from the sentence, it would still work. RMS Titanic was built in Belfast. A common mistake people make when they're using this structure is that they forget to include the second comma. And that's especially common if the aside is very lengthy. A further problem here arises when we're using asides. That's when we're using commas like this to separate off what is an essential description of the noun. Look at this example. I read the book, comma, the double helix, comma, for my course, comma, History of Science, comma, at university. Here, between the pairs of commas, we're apparently providing some additional information. But really we're providing the title of both the book and the course. And if we were to remove these, as we should be able to do with all parenthetical elements, all asides, all we're left with is I read the book for my course at university, which doesn't give us nearly the same kind of information as the full sentence. So really, are these pieces of information truly additional, extras? Can they be included as asides? This really should be punctuated as follows. I read the book The Double Helix for my course History of Science at university. No commas. No separation off of this truly essential information. At least that would be the case unless the only book ever written was the double helix and the only course that you could do at university was the history of science. But as there are many books and there are many courses, telling us specifically about which one we're talking about is essential information. What if we had written the following? I read James Watson's 1968 book on the discovery of the structure of DNA, the double helix, for course S203, History of Science, at university. Now what we've included between the pairs of commas truly are asides. They are additional information, because this author only wrote one book in 1968 about that topic, and in that university there is only one course S203. So to provide the title of the book and the title of the course are truly additional information. So now the commas can stay, because what's given in each case is truly an aside. That is to say, additional, non-essential information. Let me just reinforce this point with a few more examples. Consider the following. The salt, sodium hydroxide, is an alkali. There we've parenthesized off as an aside the name of the salt. But there are many salts. So to be specific, we actually have to say the salt sodium hydroxide is an alkali with no commas. So this form is actually incorrect. What about the planet Neptune has an interesting orbit? There are many planets, not just in our solar system, but throughout the universe. So which planet are we talking about? We really need to know the name of it. It is not non-essential information. So again, there should be no commas in that sentence. And lastly, the first woman, Eve, lived in the Garden of Eden. By convention, we regard the first woman as Eve. So giving her name is truly additional information, because we've already defined who we're talking about by referring to her as the first woman. So that version with the commas is correct. It is truly an aside. A compound sentence is one where we join together different clauses. We made a compound sentence earlier when we replaced the comma splice with the conjunction. And it's further complicated, however, when we're dealing with a compound sentence where there's a single subject with more than one verb. The example we saw before was we conducted the experiment successfully, and now we have analysed the results. In that case, we have the subject of the sentence in the first part, we've got the verb conducted, but after the comma and after the conjunction and, we again have another subject, we, and again another verb, have analysed. So in that case, we have no problem with separating it with a comma. But look at this example. He was very suspicious of the witness, and doubted her statement. This time, the whole sentence only has one subject, he. But we've got two verbs associated with that subject, one on either side of the conjunction. Was very suspicious and doubted her statement. In that case, the comma shouldn't be there, because here we're not dealing with two independent clauses. What comes after the and in this case could not exist on its own. It has a verb, but it has no subject. It's referring back to the subject that was in the first independent clause. So that version is incorrect. The rule is that when a single subject has two or more verbs, and those verbs are separated by a conjunction, we omit the comma. Look at these examples. He was very suspicious of the witness and doubted her statement. Now there's no comma, and that is correct. But if the subject were to pop up a second time, as it did in our example when we looked at comma splicing, then it would be correct to insert the comma. Look at he was very suspicious of the witness, and he doubted her statement. There, the he comes up a second time. The subject again reappears after the conjunction. And in that case, both the clauses on either side of the conjunction are truly independent and we can have a comma. We've looked at 3 misuses of commas here. We've looked at comma splicing, we've looked at asides, and we've looked at compound predicates, places where often commas are misused. In our first lesson, I noted that some people don't think grammar and punctuation are particularly important, and that seems especially to apply to the use of commas. But I hope that we're starting to see that commas do a lot of important work in our sentences. They add clarity, and they show our readers that we can write in a literate, professional style. As a reminder of that, let me give the last word to the English teacher Zoe Morosini, who said, "I tell my students that they don't need to be accurate to communicate. They do need to be accurate to be respected." If you would like to find out more about writing, why not subscribe to this channel? Or take a look at 2 of my books, which were written specially for those who find it difficult. Also, you can keep in touch on Twitter and follow my blog, The Business of Discovery. I look forward to seeing you next time.